The physical environment of Campania. Campania Felix. Ancient Pompeii Herculeum were located in the fertile crescent-shaped volcanic plain in southern Italy known as Campania. The Romans referred to this area at the foot of the Apennine escarpment extending from the Sarno River in the north to the mountains of the Sarentine Peninsula in the south as Campania Felix. Pliny the Elder, admiral of the Roman fleet at the time of the eruption and a well-known naturalist, agreed with Florus that Campania was one of the loveliest places on earth, a fertile region so blessed with pleasant scenery that it was manifestly the work of nature in a happy mood. In the following quote, he gives some of the reasons for this view. Then indeed there is the wonderful and life-sustaining and healthy atmosphere that lasts all year through, embracing a climate so mild. Campania has a wealth of different kinds of forests, an abundance of corn, vines, and olives, splendid fleeces produced by the sheep, fine-necked bulls, numerous lakes, rich sources of rivers and springs that flow over the whole region. Its many seas and harbours and the bosom of its lands are open to commerce, while even the land runs eagerly out into the sea as if to assist mankind. Was Pliny aware, when he wrote his description of nature in a happy mood, that in fact the fertile landscape of Campania was the result of nature's periodic violent and devastating outbursts and seismic upheavals? Mount Vesuvius and the beneficial effects of volcanic processes. Mount Vesuvius, which sits on two fissures in the Earth's crust, dominate the plains of Campania and divides it into two regions. The larger one to the north, drained by the Volturno River, and the smaller one in the south, traversed by the Sarno River. Although still active, the mountain's outline today is different from its ancient form, for it has erupted more than 30 times since the devastating explosion in 79 AD. Today, Mount Vesuvius, at a height of approximately 1,277 meters and with a crater 11 kilometers in circumference, is partly encircled by the 1,100-meter rise of Mount Soma, which alone existed in 79 AD. The Greek geographer Strabo, who lived from about 64 BC to 19 AD, described the flanks of Vesuvius as covered by fertile and beautiful farms, in contrast to its summit, which looked unfruitful, with soot-coloured cavities in masses of rock looking like they had been eaten out by fire. It is surprising then that Pliny the Elder, later in the 1st century AD, never identified Vesuvius as a volcano. Other Greek and Roman writers of the time were more interested in the mythological associations of the mountain and the nearby Phlegrean fields with the realm of Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, and giants in their gloomy caverns. The area was believed by some of the ancients to be the entrance to the underworld. The Phlegrean fields, or Campi Flegri, which lie behind Puteoli, a 15-kilometre wide series of craters, pools filled with boiling mud, and vents, or fumaroles, through which sulphur and steam escape. Lava spurs. The Sarno plain was dotted with mounds and spurs formed by old lava flows, and from ancient times these provided strategic sites for settlement. Pompeii occupied the largest of these spurs, 70 hectares in area and between 25 and 40 metres above sea level, giving it a commanding position overlooking the mouth of the Sarno River and the sea. On its volcanic spur, Pompeii caught the breezes from both sea and mountains that tempered the heat of summer days. August Mao, working in Pompeii in the early 20th century, commented on these cooling breezes. About 10 o'clock in the morning, a sea breeze sweeps over the city, strong and cool and invigorating. The wind blows till just before sunset. The early hours of the evening are still. The pavements and walls of the houses give out the heat which they have absorbed during the day, but soon, perhaps by 9 o'clock, the treetops again begin to murmur, and all night long from the mountains of the interior a gentle refreshing stream of air flows down the gardens, the roomy atriums and the colonnades of the houses, the silent streets and the buildings about the forum, with an effect indescribably soothing. Herculaneum, the smaller town on the coast, was built on a steeply sloping spur of land that projected from the lower slope of Vesuvius and ended in a cliff face where the headland fell away sharply to the sea. The promontory was bounded on both sides by deep ravines. Despite the limitations of its landform, Herculaneum on the coast of the Bay of Naples benefited from the moderating influence of the sea and caught the breezes from the southwest. The views from the houses built on terraces that descended to the edge of the cliffs made it an ideal resort town. Strabo commented that nowhere could a period of residence and leisure be more agreeable. Fertile soil, vegetation and crops. The material that spewed from the volcano weathered into deep fertile soils, grey-black and rusty brown, rich in phosphorus and potash, which supported a variety of natural vegetation such as poplars, willows, alder, oak and beech. The soil's spongy nature retained enough of the winter rains to produce an impressive array of crops, even during the hot, rainless days of summer. The slopes of Vesuvius in mid-1st century AD were covered with vines. In fact, we know from Plutarch that back in the days of Spartacus's slave revolt against Rome in 73 BC, he and his rebels escaped from their headquarters on Mount Vesuvius by making ladders out of grapevines. Other literary sources describe Vesuvius as covered in vines before the eruption. Marshall wrote, "Here Vesuvius is shaded green with vines. Here the noble grape had exuded its juices in vats. These are the ridges which Bacchus loved." Their superior grapes produced the famous Vesuviana favoured by Pliny, showing, he said, the superior of Bacchus, Dionysus, god of wine, over Ceres, the god of grain. He recorded that in all parts of Campania the vines never stopped growing. They were staked to poplar trees, growing with unruly arms in knotted course among their branches, rising level with their tops. Virgil also mentions the vineyards in his Georgics, and Strabo refers to the entire area as a wine bowl. A famous fresco in the house of the Pompeian House of the Centenary shows the god Bacchus and vines on the lower slopes of Vesuvius, verifies the importance of grapes and winemaking in the area. In rockier areas, olives of high quality were grown. The oil from olives was used for cooking as well as for basic ingredients together with flowers such as roses in the perfume industry. The area also supported a wide variety of fruit: peaches, apricots, lemons, cherries, plums, pears and figs. Cato, in his treatise on farming, revered the figs of Herculaneum, while Lucius Junius Columella in his work De Re Rustica spoke of the importance of cabbages and onions in the area, which also produced 3 or 4 cereal crops a year, plus hay for fodder. At the southern end of the Bay of Naples, flocks of sheep roamed the lush fields, providing Pompeii with wool for textile production. Many of the Pompeian frescoes and mosaics feature the abundant agricultural production of the area. Volcanic stone. Apart from the fertile soil, the volcano provided for the inhabitants of the plain in other ways. Pumice stone was exported, and lava was used in stone millstones for grinding grain and pressing olives. Cato noted that the top olive presses made of volcanic stone were to be found in Pompeii, and admits that he bought one for his own villa despite the great cost of transportation. Various types of volcanic materials such as tufa were used for building, and other types for paving roads. The coastline and the Sarno River. The Campanian coastline, praised for its beauty by ancient writers, faces the Tyrrhenian Sea with the wide sweep of the Bay of Naples partially enclosed by peninsula on its northern and southern extremities, and the offshore island of Capri and Pithecusae. The bay provided a number of safe anchorages, particularly at Misenum, on the western extremity of the Gulf of Puteoli. There, a double-shaped basin made a perfect natural harbour, which was reinforced during the reign of Augustus and became the main naval station of the Roman fleet. The former Greek port settlements along its northern shore, Naples, Cumae, and Puteoli, had trading connections with the Greek East, which contributed to the prosperity of the other settlements in Campania. Further to the south, the Sarno River widened into a lagoon-like estuary as it entered the sea. Columella, in his De Re Rustica, talks about the delightful estuarine marshes of Pompeii. According to Seneca in Naturales Questiones, where the Stabian and Sarentine coast meets that of Herculaneum, is a soft and sinuous bay that provided an ideal harbour at the time. The port of Pompeii, which Strabo says accommodates the traffic in both imports and exports, was at the crossroads of the coastal route from Cumae to the Sarentine Peninsula, and the inland route to Niceria, Essere, and Nola. Smaller ports like Stabai lay along the bay's southern shore. The rich waters of the bay supported a thriving fishing and shellfish industry. Salt pans formed where the water of the bay pushed into a depression near Herculaneum, and the oily fish, including tuna, mackerel, anchovies, and moray eels, provided the raw materials for the famous fish sauce for which the region was known. The Sarno Plain and adjacent coastline were dotted with bustling towns like Pompeii, Niceria, Boscarelle, Stabai, and Herculaneum, as well as tranquil villages and farms engaged in an intensive form of agriculture. It is not surprising that Campania, with its temperate sea breezes, mild winters, mountainous background, magnificent panoramas, thermal pools, fertile soil, and brilliant sunshine, attracted many famous and infamous Romans who thought it a most delightful place to stay, reside, and who made it their playground. Senators, wealthy businessmen, and even members of the imperial family in the 1st century BC, AD, built imposing villas in the area and transformed farmsteads into luxurious working villas. The handiwork of man blended into the landscape of the grand style. Thanks for listening, guys.